Hey, welcome to Fun in the Philippines. It's a late night. We're just looking at in the Philippines how the use of nicknames is well, most people have a nickname. Of course, nicknames are usually the well-known nicknames, the things that are derived probably from the name itself. So I looked at some of the nicknames that we have, and they are the names that we've given to things. A lot of the nicknames are for the work that we do, where we have our, it becomes a nickname for the project. So we've had a lot that are on, well, we've had 31 houses, and each of those houses has a nickname. I haven't written those down, but I've written a few of the other nicknames down that I thought might be interesting. So I've got, of course, my life wouldn't be worth living if I didn't put Beth at the top of my list, and that Beth is my warrior princess, and she got that name because when we went round with some of the difficult cases to the hospitals, which if you've seen any of the videos that we've done of the hospitals, it's an absolute madhouse. But outside is a madhouse as well, where there's lots of people waiting. You have to be able to navigate the system, and Beth was always able to do that, and she did that with a smile. And she went from window to window. They'll send you from one window to the next, and you might have to get in line to do that. In the Philippines, they're not so, well, it's not the same as it may have been used to in the UK, where everybody dutifully got in line and nobody pushed in, and if they did, everybody would be totally outraged. I say, excuse me, there's a line, you know. So anyway, so my warrior princess. And the next is Bibi, our little Bibi. She's not so little anymore. She's growing up fast, regrettably. But every time I look at Bibi, she has such a beautiful face that she became beautiful Bibi. Taliklik is growing up now into a young woman, and we have to remind her, because she's had so many beautiful clothes that have been sent to her. Probably most of the ones that she seems to wear, I think, have been sent by Tintin, Christine Perez, and she sent so many beautiful clothes. That's a lady that has some style, and so now by default, Taliklik has become the fashionista, and she's tall, she's extremely skinny, she is fashion model skinny, and with perfect proportions. There's something that's very interesting about models, which you may or may not know. Everybody says, oh yeah, she's got really long legs. Well, it's not just that, it's the proportion between the torso and the legs is really critical. So what a lot of people who are actually very beautiful have the upside down formula for body beautiful, and that is they're long in the torso and short in the legs. To be a model, I think that you must be short in the torso and long in the legs, and our fashionista Taliklik is certainly that. She has long legs and short in the torso, so her proportions are actually perfect for being a model. And if she continues to grow at the rate that she is now, she certainly could, if she had, well, I think that it requires a great deal of persistence and know-how to be able to become a model. And so, you know, maybe the thing that we will focus on in helping Taliklik to make her way in the world may be to help her by sending her to a model school. We'll look at that later. Anyway, her other nickname, which we do to chide her, scold her a little, if she starts getting a little bit, well, teenage, is the rich woman, or the princess. Sometimes we say, excuse me, you're a princess. Anyway, that's Teleclick, and she is now growing into a young lady. We lost the little girl. Now, Paulina, you won't know who Paulina is because her nickname is Manninglina. That's her nickname. Everybody calls her Manninglina. Manorado. Rado does have a nickname. Rado I call the Iron Man. The Iron Man. And I call him that because once we had bought a washing machine. And this is before the days when we got the road fixed. And I'm not even sure if there was a bridge. But anyway, there's that very steep hill that if you've watched any of the videos of me walking that hill to show you just how much it takes out of you just to walk it. At the end of it, if you push the walk up that hill to get to the top, believe me, at the end of it, you can take, I think one of our friends, Kerry, our Aussie friend, said it took 4 minutes to return me. I pushed it, by the way, a power walk up that hill, and it took about 4 minutes, I think, to return to normal breathing. Well, when we got the washing machine, it was stuck down the bottom. We couldn't get it up. This is before any concrete. I walked in concrete. He came down. It was a muddy path. When Nana used to walk that path, she used to take a stick, and she would take a walking staff, and she would take that to make sure that she didn't go to into any deep falls. Rado came down, and I was thinking, gosh, I'm not looking forward to helping him to get this up that hill. He stripped the cardboard box off the washing machine, and then he lifted the washing machine onto his shoulder, and he walked up to the house in one. He is the Iron Man. Timio. Who's Timio? Timio is Beth's older brother, and practically everybody knows him as Pastor Timio. He's the pastor. Nanai. How could we not have a nickname for Nanai? And the obvious one that comes to mind, because of what Beth calls rat-a-tat-tat-tat, I call her the machine gun Nanai, because that's what it sounds like sometimes when she gets on to the grandkids. Machine gun Nanai. Lovely May. What can we call Lovely May but Lovely May? Now, Dwayne, our friend Dwayne, now not everybody has a nickname. All right, sometimes it just isn't. There's no nickname. Their name is their name. But with Dwayne, we called him. He had such an incredibly unusual job that we called him the Antarctic Explorer, because he actually works in the Antarctic, and he works in temperatures that are so cold that if you took your glove off outside 5 minutes, it would be frostbitten. Probably a lot less than 5 minutes. So he's the Antarctic Explorer. What about little Batjoy? Everybody loves Batjoy, and we always told him that he is Pogie. Now, we've since taken that name, Pogie, because Batjoy is not living with us. He's with his mom right next to the school, because now he goes to school. So our little dog is actually called Pogie, but we called Batjoy Pogie Batjoy. And what a great little boy that is. Now, some of these names are not to be repeated as the name of the person, okay? We don't get on with everybody, and that is, well, that's the human condition, isn't it? We don't love everybody, not everybody loves us. So, we have the goat. We have the goat for reasons which, if you lived here and you knew, then you would know why. But the goat is not altogether kind, but it does sum up a particular kind of thing and person. And then we have someone else who, Beth, I always thought this was a fascinating name, was called Iggy Talk. And Iggy Talk, what can I say it on our channel, which is supposed to be totally clean, but yes, shoot for brains, Then there was Walter Mitty. Well, we stole that from the famous character Walter Mitty. Walter Mitty has since become a psychological condition. Do you know a Walter Mitty? So a person can be a Walter Mitty, and a Walter Mitty is someone who makes up stories and then apparently actually believes them. So yes, we have a Walter Mitty. The blind man. The blind man, it wasn't for any other reason than we have a great number of different projects, and he was the blind man. And then there was one that happened just by accident. We went to look at a house that was next to the crab factory where Pastor Timio's wife works, and we went there, and when we saw this house, it was terrible. So it became the terrible house. Now later, when we'd rebuilt that and knocked down the terrible house, the nearest association that we have for the old man that lives in his nice new house now was the terrible man, as from the terrible house. So he became the terrible man. Well, of course, he's not a terrible man. The grassroots pastor. The grassroots pastor, a German subscriber that we used to have, said, I don't understand this idea of grassroots. And well, grassroots, if you like, someone actually made a comment and said, it's a long time since I saw a pastor with a trowel in his hand and probably with cement all the way out to his elbows. That's what you call a grassroots pastor, someone who gets right down into the grassroots and helps the people. Well, that's Pastor Timio, isn't it? And the grassroots pastor was always my other brother-in-law, which is Gilbert, and Gilbert is married to Beth's sister, Bewley. Now, some of Beth's names for some of our animals. We've got James Bond, the Carabao. We've got Brad Pitt, the chicken. And that's not any casting in aspersions on the level of courage or lack of it that Mr. Pitt, the great actor, has. Beth just called one of the chickens Brad Pitt, and it stuck because to me it was so funny. Now, Perry, we've got one group. We've got a group nickname for the guys who build our houses, work on the church, working on Pastor Timio's the project at the moment, and we call them the Superman team. I think that any group of guys who can get together and work so beautifully in harmony that they can build a house in 3 days are Supermen. So I called them the Superman team. So as part of the Superman team, we've got Perry. Perry is an unusual man in that he's not as old as Timio, I don't think, but he works so incredibly hard, especially mixing concrete. Put Perry to work mixing concrete, and I used to look at him and say, my God, he is a machine. So it became Perry the Machine. What else? And the Superman team. Now, there was a little girl who came into our lives who was suffering from osteogenesis imperfecta, which, for those of you who don't know, which would be what I was in a state of ignorance before I met this little girl. And her name is Jenna Lynn. Now, we have to, and we get we get criticized a lot for this because Beth loves to use the word shocking, and anything can be shocking. You know, you can go down and I don't know, buy some melons, and it will be a shocking trip to buy melons. Well, it seemed to me that we wondered about Jenna Lynn, whatever will happen, and then some of the titles and some of the nicknames that we have are derived from movies. And I remember a movie called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It was a horror movie, so it was quite a number of years ago, but some of you older people will remember this. It was called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And sometimes when you want a catchy title, you can steal from something else. Now, there's a lot of examples of this. The singer Tom Jones, I believe, chose his name right about the time that there was a very famous and very successful movie called Tom Jones. He called himself Tom Jones, and it worked. There's another one who titled himself after a very famous classical musician, and he called himself Engelbert Humperdinck. Who could have thought that a name so cumbersome as that would become an everyday household name? But it did. There's a few that have taken objects, and one was Rip Torn. There's an actor called Rip Torn. There's another, there was a movie character, and whenever you went into a garage and it was a limited headroom, it would always say max headroom, maximum headroom, and somebody used that name, Max Headroom. So finally we're back to Jenna Lynn and the little girl who had the bone deficiency where she would break bones very easily. Terrifically brave little girl, wonderful. You can't meet a little girl like Jenna Lynn and not be impressed and not be a little bit humbled as well, because she is so brave. I carried that little girl for several hours around what seemed like an uncaring emergency room in Dubai, until finally, because she had had that broken leg for a week and gone through, obviously must have gone through incredible pain. And when we were finally called in, when we finally heard about her, we went, and that's when we found, I said, this child has a compound fracture of her leg from the knee down. And we got her to hospital, but because the first question that they ask you when you go into emergency room is, when did this happen? And of course we told the truth and said a week ago. Well, it's not an emergency. Go to outpatients. Well, first we went and sat in outpatients, and I sat there with this little girl in my arms, and finally I said, well, for God's sake, this is not working. And I went back in, and there were several nurses who were in ER, and they weren't actually doing anything. I said, look, this child has a compound fracture of her leg, and I've been told to go to outpatients because it's not an emergency. She's a little girl and she has a broken leg. Isn't that an emergency? Well, they finally managed to locate the doctor, and the doctor came in. So that's what, if you ever wonder whatever happened to baby Jane, we call Jenalyn baby Jane, and she is still called baby Jane. And if you say to her sisters, where's baby Jane, they know exactly who you are talking about. It's their sister. And even she knows herself now as baby Jane. We also use the baby idea for Faith, because she's a tiny baby, 3 months old when we found out about Faith, and we called her baby Faith. Now, when we first went round to see he was at that time a paralyzed man, we called him the Paralyzed Man, and he died sometime later and left his family in this terrible house, awful house, and that became the second house that we built, and that is still called the House of the Paralyzed Man's Family. And when we were there, the next house that we built was for the 3 little girls. 3 little girls, it stuck, even though we soon found out after making that the name of that house, we found out that actually it was 4 little girls. So now they're called the House of the 3 little girls. Well, it's really 4 little girls. So that's what's what. Well, each of those little girls is a character. And when I first went there, we had Spaghetti. We had a little girl who, when we were feeding at the church once, or we took her in, I think, into Taliban, and Beth said, what would you like to eat? And she said, spaghetti. And she said it with such passion that forevermore she's called Spaghetti. Her sister is called Badui. Badui, spell it how you will, but it's Badui. And her sister is called Yan Yan. And then the wonderful eldest sister who has taken care of her mom while her mom has been in postnatal depression is Angelica. And what a wonderful name. There's no better name for that little girl than Angelica. So, there's Fool on the Hill. We all have people in our lives, and sometimes a song or a movie, it just hits the nail right on the head. The Fool on the Hill. The other one is Lonely House, and that's a very apt description for one of the houses that we pass at times. So, Lonely House. Now, I guess you'll ask what my nickname is, and my nickname is not so much a nickname as an honour, because we try to do our best to help children. The emphasis on our work is the children, and it's not about the adults. Very early on, when we started to help, at one house that we were thinking about, maybe we should do that house, I remember that Nanai gave us some background, call it gossip or not. But she said the father is into drugs. Now, I know that lots of our subscribers have advised that we be judgmental, that we make a judgment. That's what being judgmental is. What would we do if a man is into drink, is into drugs, and has, say, 4 children? Where's the emphasis to go? Where's the focus to go on for that family? I say it's the children, and Beth agrees. And so we agreed right at the beginning that we would suspend all judgment. Suspend it. It didn't matter to us what the father may or may not do. And since then we've had one where we called it the house, the leaning house. The leaning house was in such bad condition that it was actually leaning over, and instead of being upright like this, it was actually like that, and it was about to fall down and really needed urgently to be replaced. And we heard at that time that the father was a drinker. This is a problem with that, is it's not a question of whether you agree to drink or not, but what can happen is that any help that's given may end up going down and finding all the happiness that money can buy at some local sour store often. So we suspended judgment and we built the house. And not very long after that, the father died. So this is still the family of the leaning house, and that's what we call them. So that brings us into the focus of children, and what we would like to think, us with our rose-colored glasses, what would we like to think? We would like to think that the acts of kindness that we are the channel for people who see the stories that we tell and say, I would like to help on that, for those. And this is not a video to solicit funds. This is simply talking about nicknames. But there's always background to every nickname, and there's always background to every decision. And our decision right at the start was children. And so we go in, and whatever the parents do or don't do, whether they have whether they believe in birth control, whether they are Roman Catholic, whether they are staunch Roman Catholic, in which their beliefs are important to them and not for us to make judgments on. So therefore we've had to tell people, look, some people have said very, very strongly, what you should be doing is teaching these people birth control. If we went into the houses that we go into to help and started to preach a different way of life, the price would be too high, and we wouldn't actually be welcome there. So we prefer to be welcome so that we can help the kids that are there, and that's what we do. So we go in and we try to give a place that is safe, secure, dry, and you might not think that that's an issue, but believe me, the houses and the roofs that you see in our videos are for real, and they don't hold out the rain. The house that we are waiting so desperately to get on to do right now does not hold out the rain, and there are 2 small children there, which makes it very frustrating for us. That's house number 32. So everybody has a nickname, and I feel quite honoured that once when we were at church and a lot of kids were gathered around where I was sitting, and there was a new child there, one that had not been there before and didn't know me, and she said, I was told, she said to Bidui, who is only like 5 years old, she said, who is this man? And Bidui said, that's Daddy Terrance. I thought that was a great honour. So this has been about warrior princesses and Walter Mitty's and Lovely Mays and Machine Gun Nanais and all of those things that we take for granted while we're here, but which you might find of some interest. Thanks for looking in. This is A Foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.